For years, eyewitnesses have been seeing mysterious upright canine creatures that they cannot describe, and has left many mystery into the world. It is unknown what lurks around into these creatures, but with sketches, drawings, and thousands of accounts, the mystery is. Join us as we talk about Dogman, the most terrifying cryptid in the world.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the 10 Tales of Dogman. Before we get started with the show tonight, I want to thank everybody who has liked and subscribed and has enjoyed the show's content. We are only 4 more episodes after this until we complete the miniseries, but until then, though, stay tuned to the YouTube because we have a lot of content coming your way with Dogman and other mysterious phenomenon related. So, of course, folks, thank you again for tuning in to the 10 Tales. Tonight's episode, along with next week's episode, is a 2-parter, so enjoy. We have a special guest here. You've known her from Dogman Encounters to the Confessionals. Her name is Lisa. You know her popular for episode 72 and so on and so forth. One of the best, if not interesting, eyewitnesses with Dogman activity and in general. Lisa, how are you? Thank you for coming on to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You know, Lisa, we've spoken dozens, if not millions of times about this subject, and it's crazy. I mean, it's almost as if it's like, you know, a recurring thing. It's like a part of you, I mean, in a way. I mean, I don't know how you would take kind to that, but, I mean, how do you, I mean, before we even get into the whole discussion, I mean, you've had so many encounters left and right. I mean, how does it feel, like, in a way, to, like, kind of have this go on with you activity-wise? I mean, do you feel it's, like, interesting, or do you feel it's, like, a little scary? I mean, it's understandable if it's scary. I would be scared myself. But, I mean, just in general, I mean, how is it with this? You have so many stories, so many encounters. I mean, how is it do you keep up with life with all this stuff going on?
Well, I mean, it's been kind of a journey. I mean, for a long time before I even started talking about my encounters, I really kind of felt scared a lot. And then when I began to kind of realize through my own research first about Bigfoot, the more I would look at eyewitness accounts and hear people's stories and just study the subject, I'd have memories. So it would trigger memories for a while, and then I came across Dogman Encounters probably about 3 years ago when the show was still relatively new, and at first I thought it was absolutely ridiculous, but then I was curious and I started to listen, and as I began to listen, I began to realize that not everything I had seen was a Sasquatch, and I really wanted to touch base with somebody about my experiences, but I was really afraid of ridicule, which I think most people are afraid of, and I was still trying to figure out why I had so many encounters, and it's not constant, so it's not like every day I wake up and there's a dogman outside. You know, it doesn't work that way. There's been phases and stages in life when when I've had activity, and then there's been times when it's been really quiet. So I don't know how to describe it. I mean, it's more of an acceptance. I have to live with it. I don't feel a sense of self-pity, but I also don't feel, you know, I don't know. It's more like this has become my normal. Sometimes I really don't even want to talk about it. Let's put it that way. Like I've met with people and actually have sat down in people's kitchens talking about this subject, and There's been times when I've looked at that person, I've been like, can we talk about something else? Only because the reality of it, when I really think about it, is this is very disturbing. That's probably the best way I can put it. It's disturbing. However, being able to talk to other people about it who are having encounters and just researching it and being a part of the community is therapeutic. I don't like hearing them at night. I mean, that does happen. This past weekend, I heard a thud against the house, and that could have been something. But after my adventures a few weeks ago, where just down the street from my house, I mean, there was just this incredible, rush of activity. I think it was either by Monday night or Tuesday night, there was definitely something on my roof. So I woke up about 4:30 and heard something moving around kind of right above where I was sleeping, and then I heard it walk across the roof and jump off. And when I went outside, my grass was still really high and had been cut. I found footprints and I found body impressions, and I went into one area where I know they come up from the river bottoms through my neighborhood into a canal that runs through my backyard, and there was a very strong animal smell and more prints. And so that was disturbing. So in a moment like that, like I just actually sat down on my back steps and was just kind of staring at everything, but it was almost like I kind of was just lost in space for a little bit. I just kind of zoned out. And the reality of it can be so heavy sometimes that it's overwhelming. And so I had other things I had to do, and I knew I couldn't spend a lot of time in that headspace, but it does come up. So I kind of just had to allow myself to kind of feel freaked out, and like I normally do, and just kind of process, okay, there was definitely something here last night, and it left a lot of evidence behind. Okay, now I have to go shopping, or I have to pick up my kids from school or whatever. So it's this weird duality of what we would consider normal life, everyday, day-to-day life. But this is also thrown in. So this is a part of my normal life too. So that's really the only way I can describe it. It has been stages since day one of coming out to Vic Cundiff, who to me he's a really good guy, and he's become a friend. And when I first talked with Vic, he just stayed on the phone with me for about 7 hours, just helping me process the
Wow.
encounters I had before even going on the air, which helped. But it left me with feelings of feeling really ill and really out of it, and I actually had nightmares for a few months because I relived the encounters. Okay, something was here last night. It left behind tracks. Oh, well, I have to go pick up a tuxedo for my son because he's got prom. So dealing with both things, there's been the acceptance of, this is a part of my reality, and it's been going on for about 40 years off and on. So I don't expect it to change anytime soon.
Well, you know what? I mean, coming from me personally, speaking to you various times, been both present and, of course, in the past, you probably one of the most interesting eyewitnesses of Dogman activity ever, to be honest with you. You have so much going on, and it's crazy how you've had this connection with them and how it's kind of escalated to where now they've shown kind of different ropes with you in a way, with what is the possibilities of what they're trying to do. But you mentioned that one of them was trying to was on your roof, or what you believed was something on your roof. Now, has that activity been like something lately that's just brand new? Like, what about the new activity? Like, let's start there, and then let's try to work our way back into some of the other stories. But like, I'm curious about the new activity, because you mentioned about the roof thing. Now, what else is going on besides mysterious creatures going on the roof, or in general just them basically following you, whatever the case may be? Like, what else is going on?
Okay. Well, So down the street from my house is a park. Very large park too. It basically wraps around the east side of town, going to the northwest, and it's right near the river. And I've gone down there a few times on my own, and I never go too far into the park because I normally just start getting this really eerie feeling at a certain point, because like I'm being watched or followed or stalked. And so I've just always felt like it's never been a good idea to go down there alone. But oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start with the new activity. But I've just had some really strange stuff happen, I guess, within the last month. And I don't really know what's connected and what's not connected, but it's all pretty weird. And I think the first thing that I noticed was a friend of mine on Facebook. She has, I don't really know why she does this, but she loves to share about missing people. And so she'll do this she'll do this almost on a constant basis. I can understand kids, and I normally am very inclined to share information if it's a child, because if it was one of my kids, I mean, I couldn't imagine what that'd be like. But she shared about this young man who disappeared in the park down the street. Now, I'm literally, I can't be any more than 3 to 5 miles from this park. And it's like a 5-minute drive, from my house. And there's been no trace. As far as I know, up to date, he disappeared on April 22nd. There's been no trace of this guy. They're finding nothing. So I thought that was very alarming, considering that I have found prints in that area. Also, really strange stick formations, like teepee formations and everything, and tree breaks and twists, which, as far as we know, is just attributed to Sasquatch. However, I am hearing some theories now that dogmen perhaps do these things too. So I started thinking about, the missing 411 thing that David Blades is famous for. I started thinking, okay, there's definitely something living in that park. And as far as I know, it got extensive where they were searching with hounds, they were searching on horseback, they dragged the river, and as far as I know, they still haven't found anything. Now, they're saying that this man was suffering from depression, and it's very possible that he may have taken his own life. I mean, but still, there's been no trace. So there was that. I also was approached by a very strange person through Facebook, claiming to be a Lycan, and he didn't know anything about my page, as far as I know. But there were some very strange things with that. And in fact, I actually went ahead and FaceTimed him, and there were some very strange things that I really can't explain. With his eyes did something very weird. They kind of looked red for a moment, just like a canine, quite honestly, and then they went normal. But as I was having this conversation with this guy, I was like, okay, this guy's a junkie. He was missing teeth. He was kind of out of it. Just still really strange and predatory, but I kind of muscled my way through the conversation with him until he had to go. But even there were other people in the room that he kept referring to as his family, and that was just really odd. Like, I got a very odd feeling from the whole conversation, the whole experience. But once it was done, I just went ahead and deleted and blocked him, because I didn't really know what was going on with that. But then I had talked to a friend that you also know of, who said that she had the same experience but with a different individual, which was also very strange, claiming the same thing. Only I think that the gentleman she was speaking to claimed to be a werewolf, and that was also very strange. So it was kind of in the height of all of this, and I had been contacted by this man who wants to remain anonymous, so we'll refer to him as the man from Texas, who contacted me like several months ago about, I first ran the idea of going on an expedition to the LBL, And he contacted me months ago and said, hey, will you give me, let me know when that's going to happen because I'm interested. And, of course, I told him that was fine. And then about 2 months ago, he contacted me kind of urgently, and he said that he really wanted to come out and meet with me and learn everything that he could about Dogman. And I asked him why, and he said, well, a buddy of mine says that, that this woman in Texas was murdered or killed by something. And the authorities were saying that she was, like, torn apart by wild dogs. And I didn't know all the details other than he said that before that happened, this lady had gotten in contact with his friend saying that she had dogmen on her property, and he went to go investigate, and sure enough, saw them for himself and was literally chased off her property by them. And then the authorities found the woman dead a week later. So the man from Texas got in touch with me, and he said, we are trying to figure out if these things can be killed or not, and what that would imply, because he went against his better judgment, thinking, I should have just gone ahead and killed these things, and I didn't. And the lady ended up dying, so he felt partly responsible, and contacted the man from Texas and said, do you think that that's a possibility? I know that you've been researching this. Do you think that these things can be killed? And at first I was very uncomfortable about the idea, because I do know, just from my own research, that they seem to be vengeful. If you hurt one, they seem to want to come after you. So I told him that was a bad idea, and he said, I understand that, and I'm not trying to start trouble, but I want to learn everything I can. And so he came out, very, very brilliant guy, very smart guy, very down to earth, and we went into the park that's down the street from my house, where this man had gone missing, and sure enough, they had posters up for him. We found horse tracks, we found dog tracks, obviously, people on horseback looking for this man, no trace. But what we also stumbled across was very, very large canine prints, measuring, the largest one measured about 6 inches long by 4 inches in width. But the very odd thing about, two odd things about where we found them. One, we found this very long trail. Actually, it looked like a logging road that ran through the river bottoms, littered with these very large canine tracks, but also what appeared to be Sasquatch tracks, which is very strange. But we also found a torn-up campsite, and there were 2 very distinct canine prints that were just slightly smaller, about 5 inches by 4 feet in width. They were about 25 feet from this camp, and whoever had this, it was nice equipment. It was the very expensive socks that you find in camping stores. They had everything, nice thermal sleeping bag. They left everything behind, clothes, the hand warmers. Everything was just littered around this site, and the tent itself was torn up. But on closer investigation, looking into the tent, we found a flip-flop, and it was like a purple flip-flop with butterflies and flowers on it. So we knew that there was at least a female. And we don't know if it was connected to the guy that went missing or not. But whoever left all of that in a hurry, and there seemed to be no trace of that person, and they didn't take anything. So that was pretty eerie. We also noticed, feelings of being watched in parts of the forest where there was like a large vacuum of sound, no birds, or they'd all be like way deeper in the forest or way on the other side close to the river. And so we just kind of, spent some time doing some exploration, and I also took him into a few areas where I had sightings before, and where I had taken pictures and caught dogmen on film. And we did come across what we think was a Sasquatch. We were doing some spotlighting, and definitely saw something, but just judging from the eye shine and the shape of the eyes, it looked more humanoid and not canine. So, however, it led up to my visitor coming that following day, or not following day. Well, I think like a day or two after the weekend. So it was really strange. But I have a bad habit of waking up usually between 1:30 and 3:30. And so I think I was already awake about maybe 3:30, and I couldn't sleep, and I was laying in bed. But just having that sensation of a presence, which will happen sometimes with these guys, and then as soon as dawn was breaking, it just got up and left. So I don't know how long it was there for or why. And that's something that I've run it across a lot of people. And the biggest thing that I keep thinking is that if this thing is really huge and dangerous, like most of us know that they are, for one to kill me, I just feel like it would have done it. If one to come in the house and kill me and my kids, nothing's going to stop it, But it hasn't happened. It's just more like it's hanging out, and for whatever reason. And so when I first moved in here a year ago, like 3 days in, I had activity. I had tree snaps. I had eye shine. I've had 3 trees broken in my yard. In fact, if you remember, I sent you the video of one right after it happened. And so occasionally I'm finding prints, but it seems, it's spring again, and it seems like within the last week I have found some prints. Some of them honestly look like Sasquatch prints, and some of them don't. Some of them look canine. And so I don't really know what my visitor is. I haven't had a clear feeling. A lot of people have asked me to put up cameras, which I'm on the fence about, only because, well, I mean, there's a part of me that doesn't want to see it, I just feel like it would just be more disturbing to actually see what's coming up through my yard and hanging out. But I may do that. I think I'm kind of at the point where I'm more willing to. My youngest daughter, it does not feel comfortable going in the backyard instinctually. She doesn't want to play back there. And so she's outside, she's in the front. My older children are aware of it. My son says that, I mean, for a while it's been quiet, but he said that he got so used to being growled at night that he would just kind of wake up and he'd hear it right outside the window growling, and he would just roll over and go back to sleep. And my girls have told me that there's been a few times when they've heard something walking around on the roof at night as well. So, and then there's weeks of nothing, so it just varies. I mean, like I said, it's not constant, or at least there may be weeks where we're just not noticing it. But I will go outside sometimes and notice strange smells, and my kids will too. Hopefully this is answering your question, because I don't know if I just went off on a rabbit trail or not. But it's terrible to say, but the truth is, you get used to it. They're not breaking my trees anymore, which is kind of interesting, because I actually stood out in the backyard, and after the last one, and I said very politely but firmly, I said, "Can you guys please stop breaking my trees?" And nothing's been broken since. So that was interesting. So I don't know. It does seem like there's been like a huge amp up, but I had it suggested to me that perhaps, they may recently be coming to visit me because I more or less went down there to the park and visited them, so to speak. I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully that answers that question.
Oh, it does. It does, and that's why I wanted to let you know. Just take time and go out and say what you had to say, because this is you brought up a couple interesting things between the sightings that your children have had, or at least the mysterious things that your children have witnessed, at least, and then on top of that, you mentioned going back into the missing person. Now, that missing person, he's never been found since, has he?
No, they're still looking as far as I know. They have not found anything. The only thing that happened was his cell phone got mailed to his girlfriend, but they don't know who did it. They don't know if somebody happened to find it and, checked it out and found the address and sent it, or if it was him. Nobody knows. But there's been absolutely no trace whatsoever past that.
That's something. That's it's mysterious when people go missing, and then it happens to be coincidental that they're in an area where there is activity. Maybe to you, maybe to us, it's coincidental, but to them, it's not. But I just find it interesting how it's like not too far from where you're at. And
I know.
Now, also on top of that, have you? Do you believe personally that he was attacked by one of these things, or captured by one, and probably, or just missing in general?
I don't know. For me, it's like, normally, when they say that somebody's gone missing, you get that, feeling of dread in the pit of your stomach anyway of, okay, that guy's gone. It's, it's a possibility. As far as whether or not he was killed, I think if he was killed, there's a couple of possibilities for that. Either he was killed and taken somewhere else, perhaps eaten, I don't know. But if we're dealing with something that is more animal, you figured he'd be torn up and his remains would be found, right?
Correct.
Or if we're dealing with something that is intelligent enough to know that if there's a trace left behind, that it could lead to them, then that would mean that they would have to be smart enough to find a way to make sure he's never found. So I don't know. It's all eerie. And it is disturbing, and it was definitely something that was in, the back of my head when we were there. Because there was a few times that the man from Texas and I were separated, not very far from each other, but that's normally a missing 411 scenario, A person is like 25 feet ahead of you, and then you never see him again. So, and in that scenario, there was one point when I was by myself, and I saw what kind of looked like a nest. It was just a bunch of saplings kind of formed together. And the last time I'd been to the park alone, I thought I saw a very large, dark shadow, at least in that. And on that day that we were down there, we spent 2 days off and on in the park, but I think it was Saturday, I noticed a lot of light. And so whatever was dark and in there possibly was not there. So I was trying to go investigate it a little bit more, but I did notice that when I was doing that, there were absolutely no birds. No birds around me, no animals moving, nothing. And that was when I noticed all the birds on the other side of the river. Or actually, it was more like the other side of the greenway in the trees right by the river. So, I do think that anything's possible at this point. Either the guy, they found his car in the park. Okay, so either he parked his car there and wandered off and went someplace else to start a new life, or he committed suicide, but they still haven't found anything, or he disappeared under very mysterious circumstances. Maybe this, maybe not.
Wow, and you know what? That's a strong possibility too. We hear missing 411 cases. We hear about missing people all the time that go missing into the woods, but it could mean anything. It's unknown because we're not in their position. We don't know what's going on with them mentally and physically.
Right.
Now, you also mentioned about this interesting case where it was on this property where this woman was brutally mutilated and killed. Now, You mentioned that there was a guy that went onto this property a week prior before this killing, and there was these creatures that chased him out of the front lawn. I mean, what was the case scenario with that? Like, was there any follow-up investigation, or was there any case, like, was there a belief that she was killed by a wild pack of dogs as a cover-up and was really killed by a dogman?
I talked to the man myself, and what he told me was that, the authorities said that she was killed by a pack of wild dogs, but he told me that her husband had died the same way. So, and of course that's normally what the authorities are going to say. Now, is that a possibility? Yes. I mean, we do know that dogs turn feral, and dogs can, they can kill people, obviously. But what he had related to the man from Texas who told me the story was that he went out to investigate, and that he was in her barn because apparently there was one very large individual that had two smaller individuals with it, dogmen, right? And that they would sometimes sleep in her barn. So he was looking around in the barn, and he was all the way through to like the back end that I guess faced like a wooded area, and he looked through and saw this very large male, and they basically were looking at each other eye to eye through this crack, and the man was very scared and ran out into the yard, and that's when he noticed that it was indeed a very large male, and two smaller ones were with it, and they basically chased him off the property. And so I guess, I don't know how he found out the woman died. I don't have that information, but I believe it wasn't very, very much longer that they found her dead. So like within a week they found her dead. And the man from Texas told me that they felt like it was because, the eyewitness didn't kill these things, and he had brought it up to the woman. And I think that she was afraid that there would be dire consequences if he tried killing the dogman. So he didn't, he didn't go back. He got chased off the property, and then they found out somehow that this woman was killed. But, he also related to me that he later found out somehow that her husband was killed the same way. And I don't know how much longer, or, how much time had passed between his death and hers.
That's a pretty scary case, because the big thing with me, and this is something that kind of leaves me a little speechless sometimes, is because there's this whole connection of things that they either do something, and as you said, consequence that will result in a major catastrophic tragedy. In this case, both the husband and the wife were killed separately, depending on what the timeline of frame was when the husband died and then to when she passed away. But there's no question. Now, was this would you by any chance know, was this like a young couple or an older couple? Or
they were older.
Okay. So, I mean, in my opinion, it may have been just the fact of something must have sprung up in that area that resulted in these creatures killing these two this couple, because it just doesn't. It sounds like so odd how this would happen and escalate the way it did.
I had somebody suggest to me that perhaps something may have happened with the husband first, right? Like the husband noticing that these things were on the property, and maybe he was trying to kill them or poison them, or we've heard of stories like this before. This is kind of like usually the first reaction type thing. Okay, I've got him on my property, I want him off, let me see if I can kill him, right? So this other researcher who's basically really approaching Dogman from a very scientific standpoint said, okay, so perhaps the husband, knowing that these things were there, was trying to take matters into his own hands. And as a result, especially if he hurt one, as a result, they were like, okay, well, he hurt one of our own, so let's go and hurt him. And then may have had them riled up to a certain point, and maybe they were just leaving the woman alone. But as soon as this stranger came and started snooping around, it may have been a retaliation on this pack's part to murder her too. So, which is a scary notion when you think about it. But it's also not the first time that I've talked to people and I've heard them say that there seems to be a sense of vengeance with Dogman. So, which really is strange when you think about it. But
Yeah.
that would be definitely getting into maybe, the whole, in a sense, maybe the supernatural vibe, but also just this highly intelligent vibe to them, or fact to them, that they are definitely more than animal. So it's just strange all the way around.
Yeah, I was going to say that I was going to be retaliation. I thought of retaliation instantly when this case picked up, because there's no other way why they would just randomly kill this couple without reason. And
Right.
It sounds to me like it may have been retaliation for the fact that he may have tried to poison them, may have tried to do harm to them. I mean, this is something that we've seen also too multiple times, except that it hasn't escalated to a death. Now, I wanted to ask you this, now that we're on the par of discussion of Dogman killings. Has there been any other Dogman killings that you have known of or have seen, like one that stands out? Because I believe that these creatures have killed people. It's just that, and there's very little information. Like, for example, okay, let me fix the question up here. How about, you mentioned LBL. What is your initial take on the LBL incident, the infamous legend of the fact of this LBL beast killing this family in a camper?
All I have to go on is theory. I really do. And part of the reason why I have this theory is based on what we've heard about Taylor, Mississippi, about how, there's a family living there side by side with Dogman for about a decade until they went into a part of the woods that they weren't supposed to, and then, everything went down, and Dogman got pissed, and humans got pissed, and then there was just kind of like this war back and forth. But I really have often kind of wondered, if we're dealing with different things. Like, okay, so we probably have Dogman, which is a creature that is always like that, doesn't change, nothing like that. And there's probably different variations, and there's different types. And if that's a possibility, because this is all that we know, like based on eyewitness accounts, and even I myself have seen different kinds. I can think of at least 3 different kinds. I've seen what we think is a type 3, which is almost more Sasquatch-like, but still having, some dog-like aspects to it. 2 different canine types. Actually, maybe, no, 2 different types of canines that I can think of. One is, kind of smaller and almost bear-looking in some ways, and then this huge, what I would call a lichen, very huge, muscle-bound, tall individual definitely with a wolf's-looking head square on top of his body. The snout, the ears, the eyes, everything, and the teeth, definitely kind of almost like a werewolf. But then there's different variations, and so, and I've heard of so many different variations. I've heard of the soldier types. I've heard of ones that are almost more leathery, in appearance, and kind of less hair, but really aggressive. Something called a face eater, that I don't really even know the whole story behind that, other than they seem to enjoy killing. But it's like, if you have these different variations, then it really depends on what was out there. If this is a true story, what was lurking around when they happened to be out there, and why? And it's like I really try to accept kind of all views. And I also really do wonder about if there's validity to, for any reason, a human turning into a wolf. This is something that we've heard too. It's legend. It's in every culture, but but even with skinwalkers, I do know investigators that are working in the Four Corners that have seen skinwalkers. So there's some truth to that. So with the LBL, it obviously was something that didn't care if it was leaving traces behind. Was killing maybe for the joy of killing. Did horrible things to these people. But I almost feel like if it was what we would maybe assume to be a normal dogman, that if it was going to kill, I don't think it would have left anything behind. That's just my opinion. I can't prove that. It just would seem like it would just be more of an efficient killer, and I'm smart enough to know that, there's going to be a bunch of men in my woods looking for me if I leave any traces behind. Well, it just seems like whatever killed these people didn't care. Almost like it wanted people to know that, yeah, I did this, and I want to inflict fear and horror. And so that almost seems like we're dealing with something like two different elements. Maybe from the same source, but then again, I don't know. We know with domestic dogs that some dogs will kill because they enjoy it. They're a predator. And sometimes, they might get into a chicken coop and tear up chickens and just leave it. Or there's going to be a dog that's smart enough to go, you know what, I'm going to get in trouble with my master, so I'm going to steal this rooster and I'm going to drag it off somewhere, and I'm going to make sure nobody knows that I did it. So I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Yeah, no, it's a good analogy, a good theory. Listen, we don't know for sure. We don't even have all the right answers. So if anything, this is all just, for us in our case. Education, it's a good theory. I think most of this field is big with theories to begin with, so of course the theories are out there, and it's supposed to be because we don't have all the right answers. And that's something a lot of people out there, especially many who aren't familiar with the field or don't have a good mindset of the field, don't know. And they have to get an understanding that, you got to be righteous to opinion, because opinion's going to be big. And
exactly,
it's important. But another thing is that we want to talk a little bit about what happened with, do you have any other further new encounters or any new information that could possibly be swept before we go back into the past and talk a little about the past before we move on?
Any new connections, like for me or for what in general?
Well, basically any new activity, like besides the things that you spoke to me about, or if you know anybody who's spoken about an encounter or an eyewitness encounter that you may know of, or spoken, like they've sent you a message to, and you're allowed to share that. Is there any other additional new information, or that was basically pretty much it from the clean slate from what we spoke of?
Oh, man, I have a lot of people that have contacted me recently about things, so I don't even know where to start, but I've had more people from my state contact me, which is nice, saying that they think that they've had encounters, and actually in Kentucky too, which isn't that far. But I've had people contact me and tell me, okay, I've got them on my property. There's something on my roof. How do I get rid of them? Questions like that. I don't know if you can get rid of them. That's my thing. I think that you can probably learn how to live with it. And I hope that doesn't sound kind of like a, suck it up buttercup kind of thing, because I know that it's not easy, but I feel like there's things that you can do. Like if you have a lot of lighting around the house, they don't seem to like that, if you have a lot of acreage, and if they're in a certain area and you don't go into that area, then that makes sense to just kind of give them their area, and you just kind of staking your claim as to this is my area. I did speak with a lady in New Brunswick, Canada, who she hasn't seen it as far as I know to date, but she did say that she was having activity around her house and something on her roof, and she was really very shooken up by it. And I explained to her that I had some similar things. and that she could see, shadows kind of, at her wood line and everything, but that they wouldn't come into the light. And I said, well, just make sure you have plenty of lighting so that they stay out of your area. So, I mean, that seems to be kind of like a thing. Like, I really think that a lot of people that are having ongoing encounters they're coming forward. Not only are they coming forward, but everybody is kind of giving each other details and tips on how do you live with this, because you're not going to get rid of it. But there seem to be a certain amount of mutual respect. I did have somebody that I talked to, who's a researcher in Virginia. He told me some strange stuff that I still don't really know what to think. He told me that he thinks that Sasquatch will steal Dogman pups and raise them to kind of be like a guard dog for their troop or their clan, which I always thought was kind of weird. And I told him about my situation here at the house, and he said that probably there is a Sasquatch that's actually watching me, and it may be using a Dogman to kind of take over when he's not here, so to speak, which I thought was strange. I can't prove that. It's the guy's theory. I don't know. But I have found both prints, and I told the guy this. So, and that seems to be a new thing too. I have found both prints together. When we were in the park, we found both prints together. We found Sasquatch prints and Dogman prints. And in fact, I know I sent you some of those pictures. Please feel free to use them. And anything else that I have, I can go ahead and send to you if you'd like it.
Absolutely.
If you want to use it for anything.
Absolutely.
So that's a huge thing right now. And that's one of the biggest things that's baffling me personally. So I had somebody tell me that they think that Dogman hunt Sasquatch, which is a very scary notion, okay? Because we already know that Sasquatch are very powerful, very big, very muscular. And now you have the concept of an apex predator trying to take something like that down and succeeding. That's horrifying. Now that's one possibility. The tracks were both leading into the direction of the river. Obviously, large animals are going to go to the river and drink or fish or do whatever, right?
Right.
So it could just be a common pathway that these two entities or beings, animals, are living in the same area. They're going to go to the river. So they could just possibly use that pathway. But then the other thing that came up, which has really been concerning me lately, is lycanthropy. And I've actually been talking to a Freemason a lot about this, and we all know that there's a lot of hush-hush and very secretive things in Freemasonry. But he came to me over a year ago when I kind of was really starting to get into research a little bit more, and he asked me about lycanthropy. And, and it was really a strange conversation, and he had told me basically that he believed it was a possibility, and he got very scientific about how that might work. So even when I was staring at these prints, and even the Squatch prints, I mean, they were very deep, and they were about a size 13, and they're bigger prints to date. But just the arch was incredible. I mean, it was not a normal arch, very deep, and the man from Texas, proved to me that he's a very knowledgeable about tracks, and he's like, I've never seen anything like this. And so we really just kind of studied it, but the lycanthropy thing kind of came into my mind of, okay, so what if there's a reality to that? What if there's validity? What if there really is certain people, for whatever reason, can actually do this? And yes, it would defy, science as we know it, and maybe even the law of physics, but we're dealing with a realm that is not normal anyway. So that was something else that kind of came to my mind. That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I've gone through different phases and just different possibilities, and there's a guy I'm talking to who I think he's a great guy, real interesting guy, who he's out of Wisconsin, and he's approaching Dogman from a specifically scientific view. He's also, part of his profession has been training dogs, like canine units. And so he knows an awful lot about dogs in general, and he's applying some of those methods out in the field to Dogman. And he's had his own encounters, and he's had his own sightings, and he's dealing with eyewitnesses. So that in itself is really interesting. But he and I were talking a lot about trying to harmonize encounters, between my encounters and other people's encounters, and just really trying to see what the similarities are to kind of get a grasp on this. And he asked me, he said, in your yard, do you have any edible plants? And I have honeysuckle, I have passion fruit. I'm not sure what else is here, but I know that the squatch like honeysuckle. I mean, I've found bushes absolutely full where I've found footprints, and then the next day the bush is completely empty. So I'm pretty sure that they like honeysuckle at least. But he told me that he's been in his research that he's been conducting, that he's finding out that dogmen eat corn, and that they will eat other vegetation. And he also told me that somebody argued with him saying, okay, well, it's an apex predator, why is it going to eat vegetables? Well, they do. I mean, a dog will eat watermelon. I had a cat that loved broccoli. I mean, they will eat vegetation as well. It's just, they're predators. They're going to hunt. That's what they're built for. So, so looking and lining up and trying to make it all harmonized is kind of where we're at. A lot of people seem to be really looking into that, as far as I know, and with the researchers that I talked to, of comparing notes. Things like in my case, I'm a single mom. But I also have a lot of females in my house. Trying to see if dogmen are attracted to women in my situation, because there's no man other than my son who's, getting ready to graduate and go on with his life. Are they attracted to women that are by themselves with children? And what does that mean? I've heard everything from they may view me and other women like me as a potential mate to women are a lot gentler in their demeanor, and they may be drawn to that. And children aren't really that scary, and they might just be curious. I don't know. And I'm not sure if I told you this past winter, I had a really strange experience one night, because it's me and I have two teenage daughters. We, obviously there's menstruation, and that comes into play. Unfortunately, when you live with so many females, sometimes it's back to back to back. So I took the trash out one night, which, had used feminine products in it, and I put it in my trash can. And then it was one of these nights where I was awake again between I think 1:30 and 3:30. And at that time, we were living on the other side of the duplex. So I live in a duplex. I live on the side that faces the street now, and I actually just had a lady move in 2 weeks ago onto the side that I used to live on, which faces the canal behind my house, which leads down into the park and the river bottoms. So we were on the old side. We'll call it the old side just so it's less confusing. And I heard something open up the trash can one night, and I heard the lid slam. Then I heard something walk across the front porch, but it was kind of like a thud and a drag, like whatever it had a bad limb and was dragging it behind it. And then it tried my front door, and then it went it came to the door of the side of the duplex I live in now. It tried that door. Then I heard it at the back of the house trying my son's door. So that was terrifying,
Wow.
But the interesting scenario was what was in the trash can. And I don't know if that somehow drew something in or not, but I kind of have a theory. And even when when I went out into the field 2 weeks ago with the man from Texas, I was kind of at the tail end of that cycle. And I was joking with him, and I said, well, we might be in luck because this is going on right now. I think that there's something to it, and I don't know why. So that was going on, but also the gentleman that I spoke of who's up in Wisconsin told me that they seem to like certain smells, like mint and lavender. And I actually had some of those essential oils, so I made sure that I put some of that on as well, just kind of faintly to see if that might draw something in. So I went ahead and kind of used myself as bait just to see if, anything would happen. But also, considering that I've had visitation and some things going on around in my house and my own encounters, I just was kind of sort of saying, well, I'm going into the area, let's see what happens. And we did feel watched. I did see something large and black kind of on the way out of the park, but all I could really see was like sort of a head and a shoulder and an arm. And I tried to blow up the photograph of it, and I may actually see if I can get them analyzed through another researcher out west, just to verify if something's actually there or not. But I heard something on the way out. The man from Texas and I don't know if he heard it, but I heard what I thought at first was a very low metallic sound, but then I instantly got a headache. And then we felt like we were being watched. There were no birds, and we just kind of looked at this area. There's a creek that runs into the river, and that's where we were. And both of us could see something, but it was not, we couldn't decipher what it was. And then as soon as we left the area, my headache left. So that was interesting. So it's a possibility I may or may not have gotten hit with infrasound.